All right, the first conic we're going to look into is a circle. So, the definition of a circle is the set of all points equidistant or equal distant from a point called the center. More formally, you can think about it having a center point, which we're going to call HK, and some radius, which has to be positive, such that we're talking about the set of all points, so any point xy whose distance from that center, HK, has that radius r. The equation of that circle is just like it says over here, gives you the definition again, but it's x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. So that is the formula we're going to use. Remember, you're given that, but you have to recognize that one as the equation of a circle. Okay, so let's go back and see what we know. So first of all, I just think it's good for you to understand. I'm not going to assess you on this, but where does this formula come from? If we think about this circle as having center r, h, and then having a radius r, let's think about this right triangle. On this right triangle, remember the Pythagorean theorem tells us that a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So given this picture here on the right, our hypotenuse, or c, is equal to that radius. If we think about these two sides, so this side here as being a, and this side here as being b, let's think about some point on the edge here as x comma y, right? That's the point that's equal distant around the edge. Think about how you could represent b in terms of x, or y. In this case, since we're talking about the height, we're going to talk about y. But we're taking this y value, and if I want to know just this distance, I've got to subtract how high, whatever this distance is, how high that is, which is k. So this is going to be y minus k. Okay, as for as for a, you can think about a similar thing. This is now your x value, your horizontal, but this, if I just want that little bit of my x distance, I've got to subtract this bit over here on the left, which is value h. So therefore, x minus h. Then it's simply just plugging in the equation. X minus h squared for a, plug in y minus k squared for b, and then plug in r squared for that c. And there we go. We got the equation of a circle. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at these, and we're going to go ahead and identify the center and radius and then graph it. So as you think about the center, think about how we solved equations as well. You know, the center is x minus h, right? So therefore, the center is at a -4, the opposite of what's in there, and a +5. The radius, for this, you look at what it's equal to, which is 9, and that's r squared equals 9. So to find what r is, think about taking the square root of both sides. Technically, you'd get r as plus or minus 3, but in this case, we only care about it being positive because the radius has to be positive. The way I usually graph this is I'll go to -4, then up to 5, and then I go like up 3 and over 3 or down 3 in each of the cases. If you have those 4 dots, then you connect it in the best circle you can make. Over here on the right, let's do the same thing. We've got a center. In this case, there's nothing we're subtracting x from, so that's going to be a value of 0. But we've got y plus 2, so take the opposite of that, so -2 will be the y value of your center. For your radius, we've got 49 equals r squared, so to find the radius, remember you take the square root of 49, and we end up with 7. So 0, -2 is a point. We're going to go up 7. We're going to go down 7, and then same thing about right 7 and left 7. Once you've got your points, draw the best circle you can. All right, let's look at some more. On these ones, let's practice writing an equation. So I always would start by finding the center. In this case, the center is just 0, 0. Then whether you count right, left, up, or down, we're going 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is at 4. So therefore the radius is 4. Now it's a matter of just plugging things in. Remember the equation I'll write at the top here is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals the radius squared. So in this case, if your center is 0, 0, x minus 0 is still x, so we're going to have x squared, plus y minus 0 is still y squared, equals 4 squared, which is 16. Okay, over here on the right, I'll teach you a little trick to find the center if you're having a hard time. If you kind of put the crisscross in there, then you can kind of tell where the center is. So it looks like here the center is at 4, comma, negative 2. Now let's count again for the radius. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so the radius is 4. Now we're plugging things in. Remember, it's x minus h. So x minus 4 squared plus y minus a negative 2. When you subtract a negative, that becomes the positive 2 squared equals 4 squared, which is 16. Okay, we got a few more writing equations. So, on this first one, we've got a center of negative 4, 5, and a radius of 3. So, x minus a negative 4 is really like plus 4 squared plus y minus 5 equals 3 squared, which is 9. Okay, this one, we know the center again, so we know x minus 2 squared plus y minus 4 squared. But the tricky part is I don't actually know the radius. They just tell me that we have this other point. There are a few different ways that you can find the radius. You could use something like the distance formula. But I have found the easiest way to do it is just think about that as being like an x and a y value. So plug it in for x and y into your equation. And then I can solve for my radius. So here I get 6 squared plus 8 squared equals r squared. 36 plus 64 is 100 equals r squared. Take the square root. R equals 10. However, I didn't really need to do that last step because notice I'm going to plug it in for r squared up there. So your final equation would be x minus 2 squared plus y minus 4 squared equals 100. Okay. Write the equation of a circle with a diameter that has these endpoints. Okay, this is similar to the last one, but the problem is we don't know the center. If I could figure out the center, then it's almost identical to what we just did above. Whether you think about this graphically, and you're like, well, negative 8, positive 8 is up here, and positive 9, negative 1 is over here, and we connect the points and think about the center that way. Or you think about it algebraically as taking the average of the x's and the average of the y's. Somehow you need to find the center. I'm going to do it algebraically. So to do this, take your two x values and find the average of them. You're going to add it and divide by 2. Same thing with your y's. Take the average of your two y's and divide by 2. So we get negative 8 plus 9 all over 2. And then 8 plus a negative 1 all over 2. So here your center is a half and then 7 halves. So then to find the equation of the circle, let's do what we kind of did above. We'll have x minus a half squared plus y minus 7 halves squared equals r squared. I don't care which of these 2 points you choose, but choose one or the other and let's plug it in. So for example, if I did like negative 8 minus a half plus plus positive 8 minus 7 halves squared equals r squared. There's a few different ways. I mean, you can definitely enter things on your calculator now, or if we did some mental math, we'd have like negative 16 over 2 and positive 16 over 2 to think about it that way, as in terms of 8, because they're the same denominator. So we'd have negative 17 over 2 plus 9 over 2 squared equals r squared. Okay, so now when we do 17 squared, we end up with 289 over 4 plus 81 over 4 equals r squared. 289 plus 81 equals 370 divided by 4. And I probably would just leave it as that fraction. I mean, you can simplify it a little bit, but it doesn't come out to a nice number. So therefore, our answer, if I plug back in my radius squared, is x minus a half squared plus y minus 7/2 squared equals 370/4. All right, pick back up the next